Welcome back to the Chasing Happiness podcast, an honest podcast about finding happiness, what it really means, and the process of getting there. My name is Crystal, and today I'm joined by a wonderful guest. Meena Aithal is a certified holistic life coach and the founder of Love Life Now Coaching. And we're going to talk about all kinds of things, love and life. But before I get you to introduce yourself, Meena, for everybody who is listening to the podcast and who knows me, I have to say, we bonded over Starbucks cups before we actually started this. And everybody who's listening to this knows how much I am totally enamored with Starbucks cups. So I'm already in love with you and think you're a fabulous human being. But for people who don't know you and haven't had the opportunity to chat with you, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Crystal, first of all, for having me on the podcast. And I was the one who noticed that you did have this Starbucks mug. I have a Starbucks tumbler. And we bonded with that, just talking about that, because especially my goal for the end of the year sounds crazy, but I was very into wanting to use my points. If you're a Starbucks lover and you have the app, using my points to get a Starbucks tumbler. And I was waiting, and it didn't happen, but it eventually happened at the end of the year. So I was so excited. So I am Meena Aithal, and as Crystal had said, I'm a holistic life coach, and I am the founder of Love Life Now Coaching. And a little bit about myself is I've been coaching since 2019, the fall of 2019. And what got me into coaching is the fact that I had gone through a transition period in my journey of finding happiness. I had gone through a lot of scrutiny and anxiety, being scrutinized by principals and supervisors as an elementary classroom teacher since 2004, on and off for about 11 years. And as a result, at one point in 14-15 school year, I decided I didn't want to teach anymore after having the last straw of being scrutinized one last time, leaving with anxiety, doubt, and number of things, which I can get into a little bit later. But one of the things that brought me to life coaching is I worked with a life coach, and that really helped me see that there's potential and there's happiness and joy that you can experience in your life.
I love this because a lot of people who go into coaching don't necessarily do it because they've already worked with a coach. And what I hear a lot from people, especially people who have never worked with a coach before, is I don't really know what to expect. I don't know what I'm going to get out of it. But you sort of walked into this knowing how beneficial it was. And now you're wanting to help other people the same way you were helped, which I think is kind of magical because even though you came out of sort of the teaching profession, which is another profession that's focused on helping people, you were like, you know what, there is an aspect of this that doesn't work for me, but I still want to be in that helper role. I still want to make a difference in the world. How can I do that? And life coaching was sort of what you picked based on an experience you had, which I think is a wonderful thing because so many people don't stop to think about, well, when did I have a good experience? What worked well for me in my life? Could I turn that into a career? So how hard was it for you to transition out of teaching and into life coaching?
That's a great question. So actually, I am still currently teaching. So I'm doing both, teaching while I'm growing my business. And my eventual goal is to eventually be full-time in my business, life coaching business. And so one of the things that happened in my journey was that going back to the 2014-15 school year, I was working I live in the United States, 2 hours from New York City in Connecticut, in the state of Connecticut. And I was working for a school district. It was a Head Start. And so if you're not familiar with public schools and Head Start, what that is, it's basically just preschool for low-income families, because in the United States, at least, it's so expensive to put your child in preschool, like 3, 4, 2.5 to basically 5-year-olds. It's very expensive, and a lot of families can't afford it. And so it's government funded. But what was nice is through a public school. But that year I was scrutinized and I was told I was not good enough, called to the principal's office. And this happened on and off throughout my whole journey as an elementary classroom teacher since 2004. There were some experiences that were better than others, but majority of them, I'll be honest, trying to find my niche and trying to find what's the right fit for me in a classroom position, especially since I've wanted to teach since fourth grade. And this is my long-term passion. But then being told you're not good enough, I wouldn't sleep. I mean, I would sleep too much rather. Some people wouldn't sleep enough, but I would sleep too much. I would shut out the world. I was calling my mom, my support system, driving into work crying. And that year especially was hard because, again, I was called to the principal's office. And then I realized I've had it and my appetite wasn't good. And I'm a petite woman. So no one wants to not eat because it's not good for your nutrition. Right. But especially for me being petite, it was definitely not good. And so I was not myself. So that year I decided that school year, I'm done. I'm going to go into social work. So I ended up in 2015 enrolling in a social work program where I did my undergraduate, a small liberal arts college. And I ended up quitting 3 weeks later because I'm like, this isn't the right fit either. And so then that's when I started to work with a life coach. She did more of a mind, body, spirit approach. And that's what really helped me to realize, like, okay, there's more to life. And then I realized that small groups are a better fit for me than a whole classroom. So I ended up going back to school teaching. I ended up substituting for that year because I was like in a transition period, figuring out what to do, working with her. And one thing I did was enroll in a program at another college that I did my master's in. And I did special education. So it was more small group. And then I was able to realize and get more aligned with what works for me, and small groups were a better fit. So I got back into teaching.
I love that because there are so many lessons in what you have just said, because a lot of people, when they discover something doesn't feel right or doesn't fit, they just give up on the idea of it entirely. And what you're saying is, I knew it wasn't right, but I tried other things within that umbrella to see if maybe something else worked. And the fact that you were able to discover, yes, something else did work, I can keep doing that while also doing this other thing that I want to start, that I want to create. I think there's such a great lesson in that, because especially over the last few years, what I've heard from people is, I can't keep working a 9-to-5 job while I build whatever it is that I want to build for a business, or while I, try to become an entrepreneur, because it's too exhausting. It's too emotionally exhausting. It's too physically exhausting, whatever the circumstances are. And while that may be true for a lot of people, I think what a big chunk of that is a lot of people are in positions where it's not a right fit. Maybe it's not a job they want forever, but it's also not that right fit, and it doesn't feel good on the inside of their soul. So it's consistently draining their energy in a way that something else under that umbrella might not. So for you, smaller groups was a little less stressful. It was a little less painful. I love that. And for everybody who is listening, go back, because I think there's a really great lesson in trying to keep moving forward the way Meena is talking about. But even in the struggle of this doesn't feel right, what is the next step? That's such an important part in this journey to us creating the lives that we want. So thank you for sharing that, Meena, because I think that's really important.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast and being able to share this.
So for you working with clients, especially because you are teaching, and let's be honest, for everyone who is listening, teaching is stressful for anyone who's teaching right now. This COVID world, especially for anyone who deals with, I'm going to say, anyone between the ages of 0 and 40, it's stressful. And I say that because I don't think it matters if you're dealing with children, if you're dealing with adolescents, if you're dealing with teenagers, if you're dealing with college age students. I think from a teaching standpoint, based on the conversations I've had with teachers, this whole thing is just a mess and so stressful for teachers. So how are you managing the teaching aspect that you're still holding on to while building your coaching business?
That is a good question. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm currently teaching from home. And so last year was the first time that I taught from home because of COVID. They gave me the opportunity to do that, which was awesome. But I ended up with 32 students in the beginning of the school year of last school year. So that was like I said, last school year.
Right.
And it was September and October of last school year. And so I had first, second, and third graders because I teach at a Montessori school where I was before, and they utilize a multi-age classroom approach. It's a public school Montessori school. And I'm not trained in Montessori, but they said, okay, we need you to take on this role. And at first it was very anxiety provoking because there's 32 little kids, first, second, and third grade, mixed ability. But one of the things that really helped me was tapping into what do I do best? And as Crystal had said, me switching from a whole class approach or whole class teaching in the classroom to doing small groups. So I structured my classroom small group last year. So what really helped is I had first graders for 1 hour. The second and third graders would do their work at that time, independent work, and then we'd switch. Second graders would come on, first and third graders would do their independent work, and then third graders would come on, first and second would do their independent work. So I found what works for me and what is in alignment with me and what works best for me and the students, because you always have to think about the students, or in my coaching world, I have to think about the client, what works for me, but what also works for the client. And I will be honest, and I'm going to give a shout out to this one person. So my massage therapist was the one, and I still see her. She's the one who recommended me. Her name is Ella, and she recommended me to see this life coach. And if it wasn't for her, my whole outlook would have been so negative. And so I'll be honest, I go through periods where, I get anxious, but I have coping mechanisms and tools that really help me. So I have a life coach, first life coach that I saw that Ella had recommended, but I have another life coach who actually has trained me and certified me as a life coach. And so whenever I go through challenges, and I want to tell the listeners that, so if you're listening, don't be afraid to ask for help, because it's important to get the support, not just support from family and friends, because they know you, but get support from someone that might not know you, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a life coach, whether it's a wellness coach, whoever you can resonate with. And I'll be honest, throughout those 11 years that I was going through scrutiny and anxiety and driving to work crying and not wanting to start my day because I was afraid, am I going to be called to the principal's office? I talked to different counselors and therapists, but for me, they did not work. When I got into work with my first coach back in 2015, I want to say around October, I remember our first call, she said to me, it was a free call, and she said, do you want to stay stuck forever? And I realized, no, I don't, because this is not the life I want to live, being anxious and worried and letting me, basically I was being robbed of happiness and joy. And I was doing it to myself, because ultimately the situation isn't the problem. It's really how we handle the situation that is the problem.
Yes.
So.
Oh, I love this so much. I love this for a number of reasons. One, the mindset, the reframing of the mindset that you're talking about is so important, because it's okay for us as human beings to struggle. It's okay for us to be in the muck and have those moments. It's when we choose to stay in those feelings, in that mindset long term, that it becomes a problem. So I love that you touched on that. And I love that you touched on the fact that you still have a life coach, because one of the things my clients will say to me all the time is, I don't like therapy. Well, that's great. You don't have to like therapy. Therapy works for some people, but I can tell you every life coach I've met has a life coach. Every therapist I met has had a therapist. The whole reason for it isn't because something is wrong with us as human beings. It's because sometimes we just need someone with an outside perspective to give us the ability to walk through whatever struggle we're having. And it's so important, because the people who are around us, our family, our friends, the people who care about us, they have a perspective based on the things they've been through with us and how they don't want us to suffer, and how they think we might be suffering based on the choices we've made. Whereas someone with an outside opinion and outside view, they don't have any of that history that comes with that, and they can look at it through a different lens. So it's such an important thing. So I love that you brought that up. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I agree. It is so important to reach out for support, and find support that works for you. If you try a therapist and it's not the right fit, find someone else. Ask for recommendations from family, friends, or people that you know, or just start researching on the internet. Because I had a conversation one time with my first coach, with a life coach, the life coach that I saw in 2015, and I saw her for 2 years on and off. And she approached me, I think it was last year, and she said, would you like to talk to a client of mine? Because she's on a similar path. She's also a teacher. She wants to leave teaching and get into life coaching. Oh, wow. I would like you to just connect and talk. And one of the ways I asked her, how did you get in contact with Kristen was her name, the life coach that connected us. That was my old life coach. And she, this client said, it's because I just found her on the internet. I mean, there's a multitude of ways you can find support. And I love what you said, Crystal. Those people know you, like your friends and family. You can go to them for support. But in my case, my mom was tired of hearing me complain over and over and over. And there was only so much she could say. And not only that, but it put a burden on her because she wanted the best for me. And I had friends who would say to me, like not say to me, but I noticed they distanced themselves from me when I was going through struggles. And then when I was after working with a life coach and I picked myself up, and I think it was a couple of years later, I reconnected with those people, and they said to me, a couple people, like, you're a more changed person, like you're happier, you're more joyful. And they noticed that about me. So find someone that you can resonate with, that can bring out the best in you. And if you're struggling to figure out who this person is, because I'll be honest, I had a conversation with one of I'll call her my business bestie, Sarah. And I had a conversation with her, and she's a wellness coach in British Columbia. And she had said to me, I was in a transition period with my business, and I was trying to find another business coach. And I was talking to different people over and over and over, like trying out different people, having the free conversation with them through Zoom. Nobody was a right fit. And I would be like, Sarah, I didn't like this person, or I don't know about this person. And finally, she's like, just pick someone. And sometimes it takes time to find the right fit. And I did find a business coach. I have 2 different ones. And so, which has been amazing. So it might take longer time than other people to find the right fit. Some people, you might find the right fit person right away. Other times it takes time. So just know that the right person to help you is there. You just have to take time. It's almost like job hunting. You have to take this. Yeah. Because job hunting takes time. So you might find the right person right away. I might be the right fit for you, or, Crystal might be the right fit for you, or whoever the case might be, but it takes time. So don't be discouraged on your journey. There are people out there for you, and don't be afraid to find someone for a season and then move on to the next person later.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I love this. Because the finding someone for a season is so important, because often what happens is we sort of feel as human beings like we owe it to people to stay connected. But at some point, people are meant to come into your life, give you whatever lesson, whatever tool you need, and then they're simply meant to fall away. And that's okay. We don't have to cling to people forever. Maybe you just need to work with someone while you're going through whatever the struggle is. And then, 2 years from now, on the next struggle, maybe you work with someone different. Whatever the circumstances are, it's okay. You're not stuck with that forever. I love that. And I love how you talk about it can be a struggle to find someone, because I think often we think, like finding a doctor. Oh, well, it's down the road from me. I'm just going to pick this doctor. But really, if you're going in for surgery, you're not just picking the doctor down the road. You're picking the doctor who has the best ratings, the best reviews, the best skills, the most experience. And it's the same sort of thing when you're dealing with a therapist or a life coach or any kind of counseling situation. You want to find someone who's a fit for you. And if you're struggling to find that, sit down and write out what your non-negotiables are. I need someone who deals with mind, body, and spirit, not just emotions. Or I need someone who's willing to be flexible because I have kids and sometimes they get sick. Whatever the circumstances are, make that list and keep searching, because as you said, sometimes it can take a while. But the wonderful thing about this time and age that we live in is you can work with anybody from anywhere around the world. You are not limited to your little tiny city wherever you're living. You could work with somebody who's in Australia or, Europe or whatever the circumstances are. So if you're listening to this podcast and let's say you're in England, you can work with Meena, even though she's in the United States, right? There's no limit to who we can work with now because we live in this digital age. And I think that that's amazing because it opens up so many other opportunities for us to connect with those people who are right for us.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also a lot of coaches, not everyone, I do this with potential clients. I like to have a call with them. I call it a free clarity call. And it's just a 20-minute, 30-minute call just to see if we're the right fit for each other. Because a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but sometimes you might get in a call, you might have seen that person, the potential client might have seen me on a live or heard me on a podcast or, read my posts on my business page or are in my free community, whatever the case might be, and had some sort of inkling that you want to work with me, but then you might get it on the call and you might feel differently, or you might feel like, okay, this is the right fit.
Sure.
And the same goes with me, or I'm hoping the person that it's almost like an interview. So yes. Like the coach is interviewing the potential client is interviewing the coach. And I feel that it's a disservice if I say yes to everyone.
Yes.
Because I might not be the right fit for everyone,
right.
Or I might not have that expertise. So for me, my area of expertise is helping women find joy in the work they do and the life they live. Because I firmly believe that when you have joy surrounding you, everything clicks. And there's certain steps that I carry my clients through. But again, I'm not well-versed in divorce, or I'm not well-versed in trauma. So I know other people that might be more well-versed in that. So I have no problem referring you out or trying to help you to find the right fit on your journey. So yes. I think that's so important too, not just to take on everyone.
Yes. And it's so important because I think, especially for those of us who are life coaches, we typically tend to run into other life coaches just in our day-to-day lives, in things like this podcast, whatever it happens to be. And so we have this encyclopedia of people who have different skill sets and specialize in different things. And so when someone comes to me and they say, I'm having a mental health struggle, depending on what that is, based on my education, I might be able to help you. But if you're somebody who maybe needs something much more intensive, I might refer you to somebody who does coaching, but has a PhD in that area, right? So always ask, especially if you're in that consultation call and you're not sure and you're a little questioning about whether or not, because in my experience, the more questions you ask, the more you're going to be able to decide whether or not it's a right fit. And most coaches are going to tell you, absolutely, I think I can help with this, or absolutely, I am not the best person, but guess what? I know somebody who might actually be able to help you. Here's their contact information. And if you are trying to find someone and you don't see anybody offering free consultations, reach out to them, because in my experience, what tends to happen is people assume, well, it's going to cost me money just to have a conversation with someone. And I have yet to meet a life coach who does not offer at least a 5 or 10-minute conversation ahead of time so that you can get to know them a little bit and find out whether or not it's a good fit. So yes to all of that.
And I love that you offer that too, because that's so important, especially for the potential client, but also for you too.
Yes. It's such a huge thing because, as you said, we are not meant for everyone. If somebody comes to me and they say, I'm a single mom, I have 4 kids, I don't have any children. I know lots of people who have children. So I can understand some of that struggle, but I've never experienced it myself. So I am not the right person to help you through that mommy struggle. But guess what? I know somebody who can, right? And that's the joy of it because we are not meant for everyone. And that's okay too. I love this. Oh, I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, me too.
For people who are listening and they want to check you out or they want to work with you, how is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Actually, there is a couple different ways. So one of the ways is you can find me at Love Life Now Coaching on Instagram and Facebook. And you can always send me a private message or a DM, however you want to call it. So again, that's Love Life Now Coaching on Instagram and Facebook. And then you can also find my website, which is still a work in progress, or it's www.lovelifenowcoaching.com. And one last way is I have a free Facebook group community, and it's called Love Life Now Community. And I believe it also has something else attached to it. Find joy in the work you do and the life you live. So it's Love Life Now Community. Find joy in the work you do and the life you live.
Perfect. And for everyone listening, I will, of course, put in the show notes like I always do, all of the links so that you can find Meena, you can follow, you can work with her, you can do all of those things. But Meena, before I let you go, because I know we're sort of a little bit over the time that I told you we would be, I typically end the podcast by asking a few questions. And because I moved at the end of last year, I actually got away from asking my guests the questions for a couple of months. And the podcast community reached out and said, we want the questions back because they're a catalyst to conversation in people's lives. So do you mind answering just a couple of questions before I let you go?
No problem. My pleasure.
So the first question is, what inspires you?
That's a really good question. So what inspires me? I would say what inspires me the most would be looking up to people who are doing things that I would like to do. So people who are motivated, people who take action on their life, people who are not afraid to make mistakes. As an elementary classroom teacher, because right now I'm teaching a multi-age classroom of students who can't come in to my district because of COVID. And so I have a variety of, I have 6 kids in my classroom ranging from 1st grade to 5th grade. Wow. And they're all in my classroom for medical reasons. And I tell the kids all the time, it's okay to make mistakes. But I love seeing people, whether it's on social media, whether it's my own coaches, because right now I have 2 coaches that I'm working with, and then one who was my coach. And now she's more of a mentor and she's doing my emails and blogs. And I love seeing them make mistakes, but pick themselves back up, inspiring people. And those kind of people who, even friends that are willing to take action on their life. Because I feel like that's where you can grow. You can be the best version of yourself. You can find joy. And those people who are willing to chase their happiness, because I feel that's what life is all about.
I love that, because I think a lot of times people feel like if I fail at something, if I fall down, if I make a mistake, I'm failing at life. And the thing that I'm consistently telling my clients is failure is part of the growth and learning process, right? We don't wake up one morning as babies and know how to walk. We have to try pulling ourselves forward through crawling and then standing on our feet and falling down and then taking the steps. And that's life, right? We fail our way forward through all of it because that's what causes growth. So I love that was your answer.
Definitely. Thanks.
The next question is, if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
I will be honest. Even growing up, even growing up in middle school, elementary school, and a little bit in high school, I was a very anxious person, and I deal with anxiety. And I have tools now to help me with the anxiety. And there are times when I get more anxious than other times. And one of the pieces of advice I would give myself is everything works out. everything is working out for you. And to keep reminding myself that, and also to remind myself, I almost want to say like little Meena, or telling little Meena, there is joy surrounding you. And when you look for joy in the little things, it opens your eyes up to gratitude. It opens your eyes up to like, life is not so bad. And I will be honest, back in August of last year, I got into a horrific car accident where I broke my tailbone. This driver was speeding and ended up hitting me. And it was a horrific experience because I had to go on FMLA. So that's leave of absence for my teaching job. And that's when I got recommended to teach back online, because I was slated to go back in person. And that was also causing me anxiety to go back in person. But the day before school started, I got into a car accident. So, I mean, everything works out for a reason, and I am recovering. And 2022 hit, and it's like a whole new Meena came about, which is awesome. The more joyful Meena. And also it's like my comeback year, I feel like. Aww. But which is, the accident really helped me to realize, have gratitude, because I can see my accident scene from my apartment. Oh, wow. Because it happened right in my apartment. But the other thing is just joy surrounds you all the time, and be grateful for your life.
That's such a huge thing. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you are on the mend.
Oh,
and
thank you.
I think that sort of goes back to what we were touching on earlier about that mindset, right? Like you, especially as someone who can see the area where you experienced that trauma, you could choose to get stuck in that and consistently be reminded of the negative. But instead, you're in a place now where you're looking at it like, that was an opportunity for this Meena, for this version that I am now, to be here. And that's such a huge thing. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you.
The last question is, what does happiness mean to you?
So happiness means really embodying happiness, but more than just happiness, embodying joy and being the best version of yourself. To me, joy is a higher vibrational energy. So when I think about like all the struggles that I've gone through in elementary school, middle school, I've gone through some stress, finding my right fit, friendships that the middle school drama where friendships didn't work out, and I was anxious all the time. And I just explained that anxiety played a part in my life, rather. Sure. Since childhood. And so to me, happiness is really finding joy. And over the years, I've learned that joy is my life purpose. And when you really think about your life purpose, what are you ultimately here on earth to do? And for me, it's finding joy. Joy and happiness go hand in hand. And so when you think of anxiety, it's a lower vibrational energy. You're down in the slumps. You're not your best self. But when you think of joy, it just, you feel like you radiate, you shine, little things light you up. Like, for example, seeing, I can see my car accident scene, but I overcame that so quickly because ultimately I think of gratitude, and gratitude is another higher vibrational energy. I think of gratitude like, wow, I'm alive. I could have died, but here I am on this earth. And then I also see the sunset, and it lights me up, and it reminds me of joy, and it reminds me of gratitude. So for all the listeners, I just want you to find, even in your struggles, and I posted a reel about my car accident. So if you find me on Instagram, Love Life Now Coaching, you'll see the reel. I just posted it last week or this weekend. And it's all about like my journey, especially with last year, what happened to me with the car accident. Also, I had wisdom teeth surgery, and that was a huge complication before that. So I went through some struggles with that. And so it's all about trusting and surrendering in the universe, God, source, higher power, whoever you choose to believe, because I firmly believe it's all about alignment and what works for you. I'm not going to tell you who to believe. And so find happiness in your day. And even if you're going through struggles, whatever it might be, just find one simple thing in your day that can bring you happiness or joy, whether it's just having a dance party, whether it's just looking at a sunset, whether it's just sitting for 5 minutes or a minute and saying, I'm just so happy to be alive. Find that joy, chase it, because life is so precious and you don't know what could happen in the next minute. And I realized that with my car accident, it was a wake-up call for me. So I want you to take that as a lesson and really think about like how life is so precious and chase your happiness and joy.
Often, especially in this busy, crazy, chaotic world we live in, we forget to take those moments to stop and just be grateful for actually being here, waking up in the morning, being able to go through another day, even if it's not as pretty as we had hoped, being able to see a sunset or a sunrise or whatever the circumstances are. So I love that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Meena. This has been absolutely wonderful.
No, thank you so much, Crystal, for having me. It was amazing. As soon as I heard the title of your podcast, Chasing Happiness, I was like, I really want to get on the podcast and be a guest. So I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, I am grateful to have you, and I'm sure the listeners are going to love this. Again, for everyone listening, I will post in the show notes all of the ways you can get in touch with Meena. You can follow her, you can work with her. And I appreciate you guys coming back week after week, 6 years into this chaotic mess of a podcast. I'm still grateful every day when I get to sit down with people like Meena and have amazing conversations. So thank you for listening. Have a wonderful week, and we will chat with you next week. Bye for now.